Hello, everyone. Welcome to our soul session this week. We're doing it today instead of Saturday because we have our retreat this weekend for love. There's a few spots left. If anyone's interested in attending, just put a note below and someone will get with you. We're doing an emotional wisdom retreat for love. We're going to talk about love and emotions and opening your heart and all that. But today's topic is a woman's power.
Yes. And we have an expert here.
Well, what I've noticed, I was, we always come up with these topics, and it's usually something that I've been working privately with people, people and my clients, and just noticing this idea. One of the main things that keeps people stuck, the women I work with, is that they project their power externally. They give power to things that make them unhappy, basically.
Sure.
And so the struggles in their life, the real core of it is this power. And what we're going to talk about today is what is the power of a woman, the anima, which Jung talks about in ANIMUS, and what we have in us that is really amazing that we can tap into. We're going to tell you how to get into it and why we don't normally actually experience it. So in the beginning, when we start off in life as an ego, we build up our ego. The ego will look externally for safety and security. So we'll look first to the parent as a baby, and it's helpless. And then throughout our life, we just basically look for how to fit in. We create a persona that helps us adapt to our social structure. And so for the rest of our life, it's almost like an automatic response to think that there's so much power out there in the world. I'm this little tiny ego, and I have to, figure out my way in the world. And it's just this daunting task of survival. And so it's a natural thing. It's not about insecurity. It's not about, just not feeling good enough and saying affirmations. It's really about what is actually happening psychologically and spiritually, and how can we own the deeper power that we have. So
I have some questions for you.
Okay.
Well, first of all, let's define the anima.
Okay.
That way we're all on the same page. So it's obviously a Jungian term.
Mm-hmm.
How would you define it?
I would say, well, it's the feminine principle in the universe, basically, in the psyche. And so it doesn't necessarily mean a woman. It could mean just the feminine creative force. So if we look at matter and physical things, that would be the anima. So if we always call nature Mother Nature, because it's a feminine idea, this beautiful, these beautiful fish and the oceans to swim in, and all this matter that we see, and even the body, our physical body is matter, physical matter, and so anything matter is feminine. So anima is the feminine principle in us, and as females, we are very connected to the earth. That's why women actually were the first developed farming. Back in the early days, they were the ones who actually invented farming because they are so connected to the earth. The women are creative, intuitive. They have a sense of magic and alchemy. And so that's the anima, the power of the anima.
Yeah. In Eastern philosophy, there's something equivalent. It's Shakti. And the Shakti energy is the feminine energy that creates the universe. The physical manifests the universe. Yeah, it's incredibly interesting. A lot of people have probably heard the term anima, and because it's kind of the popular aspect of Jung's work.
Yeah.
But in his deeper writings, where he's talking about alchemy and the collective unconscious, he goes a little bit deeper than just kind of the masculine, feminine aspects of psychology. He talks about the anima as the soul of the world.
I love that, the anima mundi.
That's right. And it's very much associated with the mother archetype as well. And he always emphasizes that all these archetypes have a light and a dark side.
Mm-hmm.
Not evil, right? A lot of people interpret dark as evil, but it's not evil. He's simply saying, like, there's creative energies, there's also destructive energies within that archetype of the mother or the anima. And so
and we need both the masculine and feminine, or nothing would be, or the duality, to create in this world, and to create things, to have an experience of ourselves.
Yeah, he says that the energy and the power of the archetypes comes from that duality, that they do represent these almost incompatible forces within them.
But if you think about just simply the man and the woman coming together in union creates new life. And so that's what he thought of when he saw the anima and animus. It's and conscious and unconscious is to basically discover all parts of ourselves so we can be more whole, and then this new self can emerge, our true self. A lot of people think their true self is this perfect person. You know, my true self is nice, and she's not calm, and she's, you know, doesn't have any issues, and she, you know, has all these things. No, your true self is really, you're choosing to see all aspects of yourself, even the things that you don't like, is to know that that's also part of you, and have that kind of union of both to create this new you that's more aware and more awake.
Right. He, you know, Jung also emphasizes this idea that we as individuals are the embodiment of these archetypal energies, universal energies, or universal forces. So a woman essentially would be the embodiment of
the divine anima,
the divine, the soul of the world.
Yeah. So when we think about women's power, we have to think about that we are the soul of the world. We're not, you know, helpless women. We embody all creativity, magic, power. Without us, really, truly, we, you know, we think about this in relationships, is that I think that women naturally, I don't know if it's because our brains are structured differently and we can, what's that called, multitask, but we can basically balance both the masculine and feminine much easier. And maybe that's why we came up with the farming and a lot of the alchemy and a lot of the mixture of herbs and all those things early, because we had that kind of capacity of spirit and matter and able to basically be the magicians of the world. And men were out there just focused. You know, I think the brain, the way I was thinking about this, the brain, the way the men focus early in life, I'm talking about caveman times, they had to go really have a brain that focused on one goal. They couldn't be distracted by a lot of things. They were out there in the wild and having to, you know, fight the enemy or fight the beast, where women can be in the safety of having that excess experience of taking care of the kids and making the food and doing a lot of different things. So I think they've developed over time we have a lot of capacity that we don't give ourselves credit for. And I know for me, when I was single, I was always feeling like men had all the power. I mean, everyone around me had, you know, the men were the corporate leaders, the men were the bosses, the men were the ones we had to be good so they can approve of us. And throughout my life, I think in my career, I've always been challenged by that. And actually, one company I worked with, I was the only woman on the whole management team, and it was all men. And it was a wedding network. And they were all telling me I didn't know anything about what the business needed to do. And I'm like, you guys have never been in a wedding. You don't know anything about it. And so, but I remember even just personally, my kind of stance of my own power was not very powerful. We learned this from our family. We're going to talk about that too. But really, I want to inspire people to really embrace that even if you don't feel like you're powerful now, you have it in you already. It's not something you have to create or do something out there to claim your power. Like when I get that relationship, I can feel powerful, or I can fit in with everyone, or the society has power, the money has power. that we can actually go within to get it, and it's already there for us.
Yeah. Well, psychologically, though, how does a woman step into that power, right?
Mhm.
That embodiment of this universal power or archetype of the anima.
Well, I think the first step is that we're conditioned to believe we're the ego, the persona. We're this little persona. Doing this work for how many over a decade now. So many people that are shocked to know that they have a persona. They don't even realize that that's not. They think their personality is who they are, and they've never even explored the unconscious.
Mm.
And I think the first step is to be open to the idea that you're more than just your ego, that you're more than just the collection of memories and experiences you had growing up, and those patterns. It's great to work on those and to change them and be aware of them. That's the first step. But what we need to go is a little deeper to what we're not conscious of, what influences are stopping us. And then we're able to access this deeper universal self that we have, that is going to transform us into that divine woman that we want to be.
Mm-hmm.
So the first step is, in Jungian terms, is to understand our shadow. So we have to look at the persona that we developed based on this anima figure, this woman. And we basically assume that we're human, and our mother probably thought she was just merely human, maybe not in some cases. And so we kind of take our identity and identify as the women in our life have shown us. And we think, and that's kind of how we kind of make like a template for our persona. But we have to understand that that was just a very limited idea of who we are. And so women that are called to this work, they have to face the shadow of, so I created this persona. What am I pushing away by doing that? What am I denying of myself? What other aspects of myself am I not able to see?
And I know a lot of, in general, men and women that do Jung's work stop at the shadow work.
Yes.
They think that because it is so powerful to understand that you're not the persona, through the shadow work, you start to kind of see the deeper parts of the psyche. But that's not individuation. They're not meant to stop there.
Yeah.
What's beyond the shadow work for a woman? Well,
I want to say, just give an example of like my personal experience with shadow, just to give you an example. And it's a very common. So a lot of you will, so we can go to the deeper level. So my persona I based it on my mother, which she's a lovely woman. I love her to death. She's such a great mom. Isn't she sweet? She's great. And she's kind of the person that wants to please, and she doesn't like conflict, and she likes to keep everything smooth, and she wants to make sure everyone's taken care of, very, very loving and kind, and which is a great template to base your persona on. So for me, I did the same thing, and I would carry that into, I don't want to cause waves at work. I shouldn't ask for raises. I shouldn't stand up for myself a little bit because I don't want to cause fights with people. So I would be like basically avoiding conflict. And then over my life, I buried a lot of anger. And so I never thought of myself as an angry person. I was like, I'm a nice person. I have this wonderful, pleasing persona. But when I started doing the shadow work, I realized how much rage I had of all the times I swallowed my power. And I feel like it's a great example of a woman's power, is that when we give our power away to someone else, it's like we're swallowing and we're not expressing our anger. And anger is really just a call to power. It's like, hey, stop it. We should all have it. If we don't have it, or if we don't use it, we'll be stepped on.
It reminds me of that show, I'm Sorry. It's about a woman who's always apologizing.
Yeah. And I think that for women, it's not okay for us to be angry. We're the bitch and all that. They even wrote a book called Why Men Love Bitches. I don't know. So there's this glorification.
Never read that one.
I never read it either. But anyway, it's this kind of tapping into that anger, and not in, I got to heal the anger. But when I went like I accessed it in my shadow, I realized how much me just pushing that anger away has led for me to limit my life in such terrible ways. Like, not terrible, like I didn't do anything terrible, but I was like kind of like not feeling, I was abandoning myself. Where people, and it wasn't even people took advantage of me because I allowed it. You know, it was more like I didn't stand up, and I even when I wanted to. So that first level of the shadow is like facing my anger and honoring it. And then because the shadow has all these beautiful energies and forces that we didn't realize we had this energy, it gives us this like a way to now the union of the persona and the shadow, that those two opposites, now we have the strength to face the universal, the bigger self, our universal power. And because human power is great, you can set boundaries and you can, you know, write affirmations and create small goals. But when you go through the shadow and then you access this deeper power, so it's something that, but you do it in a conscious way. You're not just using anger as power. You're actually going down deeper to a more universal power. And that's the Anima, the power of that universal soul. If you think about what kind of power is that? Well, look at the world. Look at the way the world has been created, the power to make matter, the pattern, and then also destructive, causes storms and fires and floods. And, you know, it's if you look at the stars and they study, you know, the astronomy, they're always saying, you know, it's a violent universe, you know, so it's also violent, but also very beautiful. And so we have those really powerful forces, but we have to earn the right. It's like the hero's journey. We have to face the shadow, the dragon, which is the mother archetype, to actually be strong enough to embody that. Otherwise it will, like, you know, it will just be intimidated by it.
So let's say at the personal level, at the individual level, a woman that stays on the surface and she believes she is her personality. You're saying that's not the expression of the anima.
She could have the goddess pictures and dress like a goddess and can be the goddess persona. But if she has fear and she, you know, is always worried about, you know, I thought I was more mystical. I was so mystical and so enlightened early on. And I realized I didn't face my shadow yet. So all this other stuff came in. It became more, I want to be all good. And so we have that persona that if we don't face our shadow, it'll feel like the forces of the world are against us. And here's a really good clue. If you're feeling like a woman, like this powerful woman, the battle isn't out in the world. Like, you don't see the external as external forces against you. You see it as your own mind showing you where you're holding yourself back. Like, you feel connected to the world in a more universal way, versus just, I got to go out there and fight the world and I got to beat the enemy and conquer things. It's more, oh, I see, this is me. This is all me. And so that's the difference. So that's a really quick test for you. If you are really embodying the anima in the divine way, you don't see anyone as an enemy. You don't see anything as an external conflict. You see it all reflected in yourself. And the shadow work is basically the training ground. It's like our sparring ground for really seeing that seeing ourselves in the projection of the world. It's kind of like a training. It's like, you know, when they have the boxers, they have the little cushion on, so you're a little protected because you're just working with your little personal history and smaller forces. And when you're able to break free and get to the universal forces, then everything, it's a bigger game you start to play. You really can shift in a lot of ways. You're going to see different people show up in your life. You're going to be able to create much easier. A lot of people say, how do I create? How do I create my life? And if you haven't done your shadow work, it's really, really hard because you still think that something external is internal. So the whole goal of a woman's power, and just like I said in the beginning, is seeing that you are the world. You are the power. What you're seeing is you in the world. And if you can see that, and even, it's hard for some people to think, well, I'm not that negative person, or I'm not that angry, terrible, terrible person. But to see that that's aspect of the universal psyche, that there's dark and light in everything. And then we're not afraid anymore because we know we're seeing our own
Yeah.
aspect of ourselves.
I mean, the exciting part of obviously for most of us is the creative part.
Yes.
So what goes on, and how does the mechanism work of creating from your mind, essentially? Because as you process your shadow, as you integrate your shadow, meaning you're no longer identifying yourself as a persona,
and your past history that you feel like
you're not tied to that.
Yeah,
you're not tied to that. But now, what's the challenge about? What's the moving forward about? Because we don't want to get stuck in just creating shadow or fighting the shadow.
Well, you know what I see happen when people do shadow work, and I think they do stay working on the shadow because it's comfortable. And I was just talking to someone about this yesterday. When you go beyond the shadow, it's kind of intimidating, because now it's like you have the keys to create. And so with great power comes great responsibility. It's like it's almost like those superheroes, like the Marvel and the comics, they get this power, and at first they don't know what to do with it. And so that is really the archetypal struggle of someone who is awake. We would like rather have the familiar. And, it happens like slowly. Like a lot of people think it's like a flip of the switch and all of a sudden you're your true self. But I look at my life from even when I was in the corporate world, and then I started my first hypnotherapy practice. And then you and I started working together in the evolution of our business over the past 15 years. I see myself as the girl that just started that hypnotherapy practice is no longer here. Like I'm someone new, and it's that kind of what limited her doesn't limit me. And then there's more to grow. There's more to see. And I started playing this game a couple of years ago called Debbie Gets Everything She Wants. And it actually takes practice. It's kind of like, remember in the Karate Kid, Mr. Miyagi made him do all these like things, wax on, wax off. I don't know if you ever saw that movie. He made the person do all these kind of weird things to challenge in the world, these weird challenges. But it's actually preparing you for, like, slowly, unconsciously preparing you for the bigger game. And so now it's like piece by piece, every time you deal with a conflict in your life, you're gaining more power. So you want to actually not run away from conflict. You want to go toward it, because every conflict is a piece. It's like two things that are separate and rigid. And when you face them, they actually come together and become more power for you to have. And so I found that all the conflicts of growing a business, of finding love, and all those things has developed me to, and there's so much more to go, to be able to really know for certain that I'm creating my own life, that it's not external. I ask myself different questions now than when I did 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I would ask, like, why is this happening to me? And, falling into like whether there's a bad economy or whether there's enough men in the world like me that would love me. Over time, you start to really see, oh, I'm creating this. There's just kind of a knowing. And then you keep, you go in, you fall out of it, you get sucked into the world again. And then you go back to, oh yeah, you remember again. And the remembrance of the power that you have becomes stronger and stronger. So again, it's not a flip. It's not a switch. You'll have these moments of, oh, wait, I'm powerful. You have the glimpses of the Anima. And then eventually she becomes more of who you embody and more of your life than the ego. And so there's a point, I think, where we start to really shift, and it can happen like it feels like it's happening in slow motion. And before you know it, it's like, oh, where did she go? Where did Debbie go? Where did that little scared, little insecure girl go? She's gone.
So what we know about consciousness is that the world presents itself to us based on what we assume is there. In essence, what we know about our own mind
Yes.
and our own self, we see in the world that reflective kind of quality of creation. So what is the difference, let's say, if from a woman that is caught in the identity of the persona to a woman who has realized or integrated her shadow?
I love that question. The person will tend to feel like more a victim, and I know a lot of people hate that word, but they'll feel like the forces externally are more powerful than them, that they are small and the world is big, and that what is going to make them happy is external. Like if I get that person, if I make more money, if I have enough money in the bank, or if this person likes me, if this person doesn't think bad of me, if I have enough friends, if I have having fun, if I have a beautiful house, a beautiful car, like all those things that if I have a certain weight, if I am stylish, if people like my Facebook posts, a ton of, if I'm successful, those things, if we define ourselves by those, then we're in ego. But if we define ourselves and we can be with all the things that we still want to create in our life, and they're not all perfect yet, and we can still feel powerful, that is the difference. That's the difference. It's like, I love one of our favorite authors, Wallace Wattles. He was like from 100 years ago, but he said that he wrote the book, The Science of Being Great, one of his books. And he said that we're perfect, but not complete. Is that we are already there, and there's still more to grow. And I think a lot of people feel that because there's still more to go, they don't want to get complacent, or it's like a constant strive of the ego to keep improving. And I also think the ego makes it a story of you're not enough, but the drive to improve is actually the divine in us in constant growth. So there's always, if you look at a tree, it's a great metaphor for this, is a tree as a seedling, even as a little seed without even in the ground yet, is perfect. It's not complete. It needs the nourishment. So it goes in the ground. It has a little tiny bud come up. It's perfect, but not complete. And it grows and it grows and it grows. And the tree I love because it lives for hundreds of years. And so we know that it's this slow, beautiful evolution, and it's never finished until it dies, maybe eventually if it gets hit by lightning or whatever. But so we have to think of ourselves that way, that we're perfect right now. We're not broken. There's nothing needs to be fixed. It's just that we're incomplete, that and a lot of people confuse this with, am I a complete woman? Or incomplete means that I'm not finished yet. There's still life to live. There's still more growth to have. There's still more adventures to have. And incomplete, not meaning that that the switch turns on and then I'm done with life. Life is always evolving, and to embrace that.
Yeah. I know this question comes up when we talk about consciousness and how the world reflects our consciousness, in a sense that people often interpret it as, that means I don't have to take any action, that I just have to imagine things or visualize things, and that they're going to happen.
Well, that's spiritual bypassing, in a way. I mean, eventually, if you're at a higher consciousness, sure, if you want to spend, your whole life trying to master your mind, there is that potential for you to just imagine it and it will appear. Unfortunately, most of us, myself included, are not at that high level of access in that consciousness yet, where we can just have it appear. We may have instances like that and glimpses of that, but we're in this world, so we have an ego, so we have to kind of go out and we have to make things happen. And I think we're designed that way because if there is no challenge, if there's no pushback and force, how are we going to ever grow to the next level? So it's great. You can close your eyes and imagine, a giant, beautiful mansion in front of you. where's the growth there? Like, what are you going to learn from that? It just creates more attachment to the external. But it's the journey itself. It's, for me, when I left the corporate world, I said to myself, I don't know if I'm going to succeed or fail, but I want to see what I'm made of. I remember saying that I just want to see what I'm made of. I want to see what's possible. And I think, manifesting is overrated, because I think we need to wrestle with the material world. I think it's what gives us that courage and that knowledge and understanding. Of course, there's the other extreme where people are just struggling with the world and not using their mind. We want to have the matter and spirit to work together. And so I do believe that, again, conflict creates change. It creates transformation. So we need a little bit of it in order for us to grow. And we don't want to be afraid of it. What's so hard about stretching yourself and being scared to put a video on YouTube, or to go and open your heart for love? If there's nothing at risk, you miss out on all the beautiful glory of passion and chance. And if we look at movies, what are any movie that doesn't have any drama in it, we're like, it's not really good. But if it has that, there was something at stake, it really helps us have a full experience of life. I think the divine wants to experience itself through us. And so that includes all the kind of ideas of the ego and the limitations that we kind of were born into, and wrestle ourselves out of them. Yeah. It's a beautiful process. It's almost like the chrysalis, the butterfly needs that struggle to become the butterfly, to fly. So we have that. It's like all this kind of the patterns of the universe are right in front of us of why we have to struggle.
So it seems like we go from this over-identification with a persona, ego, and then we go through this transformation where we get into more of the cosmic, universal patterns and understanding the deeper aspects of the psyche. But then it goes back to, what are we creating as individuals?
Yes.
Like, what is our purpose on earth?
And, that's, I think, one of the things we talk about is attachment. In Eastern philosophy, they talk about non-attachment, and a lot of people confuse that as not caring. But I think to create outside of the ego, to create something because you want to just make something beautiful. A lot of artists say their best work is when they're not worried about the money. Is that when you're worried about the money, then it kind of distorts it, and there's an attachment. To love someone truly, it's almost like a mother's love. Like when you have a baby, I never had a baby, but I can imagine how it would feel. I held babies before. Is that kind of, there's no attachment there. It's just pure love. And so there's why create a baby if, why? Because it's beautiful. And that's why we're here, to experience life. It's just a beautiful place to explore the good and the bad, the dark and the light of all creation.
Yeah. It certainly puts love in a bigger context than just kind of this physical comfort or attachment.
And emotional, like feeling like you belong, you're part of society. And I remember one time I really wanted kids when I was in my 30s, and my coach at the time asked me to write down why I want children. And all the things I came up with were very egotistical. They were like, well, my parents would visit me more, and I would feel a part of kind of a success in the family. And it really, very little of it was about, there was one thing about being a mother and being able to share love with another human being, but a lot of it was ego. And most of us, that's what we do. We want these things in life. And we say, oh, I want to help people, or I want to, have a relationship because I want to share my love with someone. But we know if we're attached, when it's not there and there's pain, we know we're attached, and we know that it's ego driving it. And so I remember what shifted for me with love was I just wanted to just meet interesting people. Like, it wasn't even at the point where I really wanted some of I had my mind. Yes, I wanted commitment, but I just wanted to have interesting conversations with men about psychology and philosophy. And then you showed up out of the blue because I just didn't have that, oh, I'm alone and I need someone. It was more like, I just want to experience this. And so especially with my business, when I first started my hypnotherapy practice, I was scared to death leaving the corporate world, but I was called to that adventure. And it wasn't an attachment of, I got to prove something to anyone, but it was just, I wanted that adventure. And so I think creating with the call to adventure, which is the hero's journey, is really the way we are meant to experience life.
Yeah. I know a lot of women are uncomfortable kind of creating big things, like, like big companies or big ideas that are going to transform the world, that kind of stuff. What would you say to them?
Well, I would ask them what's scaring them. And most of the time it's what other people will think. And if they let people down, like they feel like they don't have the talent or the skills.
But I mean, beyond the persona, like, let's say they do the shadow work and now they're able to create. How do they apply that passion and that drive, in this higher creative realm of not the shadow work, not the kind of seeing your own limitations, but the power of the anima expressed as a woman?
Well, if you think about nature, it's always creating. And so it's really just creating new things. How could you run a company like Sarah Blakely redefined the whole bra industry and inspired a lot of other women to start their own things. Some people create businesses like ours that help people, become coaches and help others and become more spiritual leaders. For some people, it's political. They want to go out and change, the world. To know that they're a creative force, it accesses something in them, which I love to refer to as unstoppability, where you know that any limitation that you see or face is coming from within you, and that you already know how to work with it because you already worked with it on the lower levels. So there's other archetypal levels that we're working with when we play in the big game. And that it's women that stand up and embrace and express the divine woman, give other women permission and inspire other women permission to see what's possible. And since we all have it within us, we can see it everywhere. We can see the anima everywhere. And then the more women embrace it more, the more other people will see it in themselves, because everyone's a mirror of each other. So I think it's more than just what you're creating, but the fact that you are in your power inspires others to remember, like, if she can do it, maybe I can do it.
Yeah.
And if no one embraced their power, we would just be all ego ladies and worried and scared and trying to keep up the persona. So I think it's very important. It's like a bigger problem to solve is not just creating money and success, but it's inspiring a next generation of women and women after that to change the world and maybe save the planet and have a safer place for us to live. And there's so many bigger things at stake.
Yeah, because I would think the anima, if its power is love and creativity and kind of this
intuition,
the soul power, right? It's the soul of the world. I would think women that embody that then would be creating companies, creating businesses, creating ideas that are much needed in the world right now, right? Because it's about caring for the planet. It's about community, about caring for other people, and those kind of ideas. I mean, that's what changes the world.
Yeah. And so, and for me personally, I remember when I was just a little secretary and 19 years old and working in a law firm right out of high school. And I ended up getting a job at MTV in New York, and it was the first. It was all men that were in the attorneys. So it was the women were the secretaries, the men were the leaders. And then I was working in New York. Actually, worked for a female, and I was looking around at the offices, and I said, "Wow, there's women in offices. Like this is interesting." And I could tell you when changed for me, and this is just a simple story. My friend, she was a paralegal. She called me in her office, closed the door, and sat down. And she looked really serious. And I was like, "What did I do? Like, am I going to get fired?" And she goes, "Debbie, what are you doing?" And she just had this stern look. And I said, "What do you mean?" She's like, "You are freaking smart. You are talented. You need to be more than just a secretary. You need to get your degree. You need to
get your ass in
gear. You are wasting your talent." She's like, "What the hell are you doing?" And then I started going to NYU and started getting, educating myself, which actually was very interesting. How that whole process, I still think about it. And we all as women need another woman to show us the way. Sometimes, we if we don't see empowered women, we can't, it's harder. But when you see empowered women, we think, well, she did it. It's possible. Sarah Blakely, billionaire. There's a lot of women. The fastest growing entrepreneurship is women. Women are taking on leadership roles all over the world, and it's really inspiring. But that's only the first step. Now we need to awaken them. Now we need to have awakened women, and that's join my force. The Athena force. That we all need to do our shadow work so we can access that wonderful process of.
That would be key, right? Because otherwise,
it's just a persona. It's a
trying to change something persona that doesn't even really exist.
Well, until you do shadow work, you still think that there's an external world out there separate from you that's creating something outside of you. The shadow work is the initiation to the bigger work. It's the initiation to your true power. And a lot of people, it has a bad rap because it's shadow and it's dark, but it's actually, we're reclaiming all of our light, all our power. Like I said, we swallowed all that anger, all that guilt, all the things that we don't like, and we're just kind of limited and feel stuck because we can't say what we want to say. And it really is this transformation that happens for us, gathering all those disowned parts of ourselves and reclaim them. And that's what shadow work is about. And then really understanding, I think, initially, is that you are the soul of the world. You are the Anima. That's who you are. And that will get you through, because you know that you're not just an ego facing these little personal forces, that you are this powerful being that's going, wait a minute, this power within me. The picture I posted in the group earlier today of a woman standing on an alligator. And a lot of people don't realize, but the alligator is also symbolic of the dragon, which is the mother. And if you think about Game of Thrones, those of you who are fans, the mother of the dragons, she was this tiny little powerless girl sent off to marry someone else. And she became the leader.
Through the fire.
And then she became destructive. So she really, he definitely studied Jung. That show has lots of symbolism in Jungian psychology. And so we know that we have this burning power within us, the fire, and we need to own it, and we need to express it, and it's okay.
You're going to turn the dragons loose on the world.
Who wants to come on my journey? The boat's leaving. We're going to paradise.
Now, one last question.
Okay.
If, let's say, women in mass undergo this process, what would happen to men?
We would awaken their souls, because the men's anima is unconscious. So they're very externally focused and logical, hyper-logical, very, they're like the active force, but without the creativity, it can be very harsh and competitive. And women are naturally collaborative. So I think bringing out that a man and balancing the men out, that would balance their psyches And I think the whole world would be more in balance. And of course, there's still going to be destruction. There's still going to be, it's not like creating this utopia, because the physical world, Maya, is going to always have light and dark. We're not trying to get rid of the dark. We're trying to understand it and see it for what it is. It's only our own mind that we're seeing, our own consciousness that we're seeing. And a lot of times what we judge as destructive or that seems like very bad actually turns out to be a gift for us. So we have to always know that there's never anything 100% bad or 100% good. It's a mixture of both all the time.
Awesome.
Okay. You want to go to some questions?
Yeah.
All right.
Let's see what people are thinking.
Creative instructive energy. I see in the world and have also heard about that 10% of men are more feminine by nature, 10% of women are masculine by nature. We'd like to hear about how the animus fits those circumstances. I know it cannot multitask and historically have been gravitated to men at the party, and speaking about heterosexual people in this question. I think we're mixing the masculine feminine from being women and men, maybe.
Yeah, I think gender is a different topic, because there you're talking more about socially constructed roles, and we see that it's socially constructed because you see different cultures have different definitions of what a man is and what a woman is, and what the man's role and what the woman's role is. We're talking about psychological cosmic forces that are playing out at many, many different levels.
And the whole, like, if they're more feminine or masculine, it could be more shadow, like their persona is more.
Well, we're more similar than we are different.
I know. Right?
Although the differences, of course, are striking for us as individuals, because we're used to thinking of ourselves as a man or as a woman, and then we see another person that's completely kind of has a different orientation, and it strikes us as what a different way of being in the world. But our brain structures are very similar, our body structure is similar, with minor variations.
Some minor variations.
But essentially we have to be similar in order to understand each other. If not, we wouldn't be able to relate to each other. It would be like, you're too weird, you're too strange, I don't understand you at all. But we know that there's a very strong attraction always going on. And
women, when we think of feminine and masculine, we think about creativity, we think about logic, not like, oh, he's feminine, or she's more tough. It's more the kind of logic and creativity. And
in psychology, we know it's a continuum. Like, you'll find every gradation of the masculine, feminine spectrum in human beings.
And we all have both, masculine, feminine, and there's times where our behavior could be masculine, feminine, but we're talking more about the psychological energies of the anima, which is a little more than just the persona.
Yeah, it's an archetype, which means it's a universal. And then the symbols that we see in the world, including our bodies, like you're the symbol of the anima because you're
female,
you're a woman, and vice versa. But it's a different way of perceiving the world than kind of the social level.
Embody the anima is feeling connected to the world in a way where she feels, I think she was just repeating what I said. Power is created by going toward conflict. I think someone's just I can't see who's on this service. I can't see who's posting any. I think they're just notes. If you're powerful, you are meant to be wealthy. What's the difference between true power and money? They go together. Well, there's people that have, if it's all psychological, because there's some people who make,
what's the question? I'm sorry.
Power and money. What's true power and money? And, the kind of, do you have to be wealthy to have power? Wealth creating wealth can be an expression of that power by being able to use the forces. But I know there's a lot of wealthy people that are scared of, they're hanging on to their money and it defines them. And to me, that's not powerful because they think the money is external. So I think that true power is knowing that you can get anything you need anytime you want, not having a huge 401k or bank account that you never touch because you're afraid of a rainy day. That doesn't seem to be true power. It's understanding that the world that you can create things at will. That's like the ultimate power.
Yeah.
And then why you need it. Some people have it to build up their ego. They need big houses to prove something to their jealous brother or whatever. And so it is kind of funny how people use wealth in an ego sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can use it in a spiritual sense, and it's a much different power.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's a tool.
If you look at Mother Teresa, she basically, she lived in squalor. I mean, she worked in those orphanages and helped all those kids, and she was very powerful. And she had millions of dollars go through her hands. People donated because everyone wanted to get their picture taken with Mother Teresa because she was Mother Teresa, and these wealthy people would come and she would say, give me a donation. And so she was able to create lots of wealth, but she didn't keep it for herself. And so is that power or is that not? How does money not relate to what satisfies the ego? Oh, it totally relates. We're conditioned to think that money satisfies the ego. That's money is not a physical thing. It's an idea. It's a psychological idea, because before money there were gold coins, and then there were people would trade sheep back in the day. So money is kind of a psychological idea. And the value of it is psychological, because when I remember my first memory of money was I was, 8 years old, and I found 10 cents and I thought I won the lottery. Now if I found 10 cents, I might not even bend over to pick it up, so it's that concept of what is the ego wraps itself around it and makes you important or not important, safe, unsafe. So much is projected onto money from the ego.
Yeah, but the ego, by definition, will never be satisfied.
Yeah.
You can feed it all the money, all the food, all the sex, all the pleasure in the world, and it will still want some more. It's simply a function, and therefore it cannot be filled. If it's fulfilling its function, it's always wanting more. And that's the trap that people get into when they identify with a persona, because the ego is the center of the persona. And so it's never satisfied. No matter what you achieve, no matter what you create, it will not be satisfied.
You and I were just talking about this, that everyone wants everything in their life to finally be like this. Like we're all searching for this elusive time when everything's just going to be perfect. And there are some times when we have it. Like I've had those moments where I felt like life is perfect right now. And then something comes up.
For a few seconds.
Yeah. The feeling of unstoppable is from the divine part of you. Yes, because the divine's natural state is to grow. It's always growing. Look at the earth, look at the universe. It's always been in a state of creation. And so that's what we ride when we're in that. It's like there's something unstoppable, not to be confused with unsatisfied. Now that's the ego, is that dissatisfied. It uses that unstoppableness or the desire to create as if there's not enough. It's never enough. Where the divine is like, this is enough, like perfect, but incomplete. I still want to create. Okay. No wonder whenever I want to achieve something, there's always a sense of tension and unease. Yeah, it's that, the tension is caused by the misperception that you are the ego. All our suffering in life is created by the ego. It's created by, we think we're separate from the world, that we don't have access to bigger powers. We're just kind of bobbing on like a cork on the ocean, just being tossed around by the waves. And there's a big, I know a lot of people like in success and achieving something, it feels like me against the world. And it's like the world is just another you. It's like you're battling another part of yourself. And if you realize that, then it becomes more of a game than a just like, poor me, I must have bad karma and this is happening. You become unstoppable. You use whatever shows up for you to grow more. It stinks that you cannot see the names. I think you missed the question. I'm not sure if I felt this power. What does this say about me? How can I transform this? So you have felt the power. You probably haven't been aware of it. So have you ever felt love? Have you ever saw the ocean or anything in nature and was in awe of it? Have you ever, felt empathy for someone who was sad or happy, and you feel like, wow, you're enjoying it with them? That's that power, that connectiveness, that power.
And in a sense, we're always creating.
Mm.
We could not be able to experience the world without creating it first. But we misperceive it. We think because we misperceive it as it's out there, right? It's independent of my mind. Therefore, we don't experience it as our creation. We think it's just there, and I'm stepping into it. But that's a misperception. We're always creating the world the way we see it.
Yeah. So I would look at for the Anima, the power of even just making a decision in your life that you're going to go for something, a desire to be more. That's the divine power. Not to desire. There's a difference between escaping something and creating. And the ego wants to escape problems and run away from discomfort. And the divine actually wants to go toward the discomfort and wants to break free of it. And so it's that kind of willingness to, the fact that you're here is a sign that you're here, that you are aware of it. And maybe it's just kind of becoming more conscious of that you are aware of it. It takes great discipline and working with the mind to achieve non-attachment, but it can be done. The reading of higher knowledge, like the Gita, is a great help. Yes, the Gita is an amazing book, 4,000 years old, translated many, many times. And it's based on Vedanta. And so if you're interested in that kind of work, he talks about like the dualness and non-attachment. It's basically a cliff notes for the huge text of the Vedas, the Gita.
Yeah, it's considered the kind of the distillation of all the wisdom of the Upanishads.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your time and sharing. Very uplifting. Every time I'm put in a situation where there are boundaries, there's a problem. For example, if I get a job and work, I feel limited. There is something in my nature that wants me to get out and move on. Is this ego or the divine power desire to create more? It depends. We have this archetypes. The Anima has 4 archetypes, and one of the archetypes is the lover archetype, and she doesn't like to commit to anything. So sometimes the ego uses that not wanting to be stuck to keep you out of going towards something. So avoiding conflict and discomfort. Sometimes we have to look at the job as, a dream funder if we do want something else, so we can stay there. So it's really a perception of what is your judgment about the work. It's not the work itself. It's not the time spent there. It's like, why am I choosing this? And what other options do I have? And if whatever you do, whatever you create, if you don't find out what's going on in the work, it's just going to recreate itself. If you start your own business, or if you do something else, or even if you get married for money, it's going to, whatever that is that's bothering you about the job is going to bother you in other areas. It'll just keep following if you don't realize what it is. So I guess the key is to look at what is that, and why do you feel limited? And you can make a choice. And it doesn't mean you quit your job tomorrow, but you can make a choice to say, I'm open to now looking at something else. And when I was in the corporate world, I did feel a little limited because I felt like I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. And I did feel like I want to, there's certain people, they have that personality. They don't like all that structure. They want to be able to create their own schedule and have that freedom. But it also takes responsibility, because you leave the conditioned corporate world and you have that steady paycheck. Now you have to have that power. It's the same thing with getting that bigger power. Now you have to be responsible. And so you have to decide, are you ready for that responsibility? It's not easier. You're not escaping anything. So the divine, again, wants to create. It doesn't feel complete, or it feels like there's more to create, where the ego is feeling it's avoiding something. So that would be a good question to ask in a long, roundabout way. The ego wants to escape problems, and the divine wants to go toward, not really toward problems, but toward what scares them, toward the challenges. And there's plenty of challenges in the world, so we have a great place. Someone said this is perfect timing in our world state. Yeah.
Yeah, we were thinking about that. We are living in epic times. And that's really why we want to bring these topics to the public, because we all need to be aware of what is our power as human beings. If we are unconscious of it, we see our power often create these kind of very disastrous situations on the planet. So we have to be able to wield it in a conscious way.
And we are going to have fear, but it takes courage to face ourselves. But once we realize what we're seeing, we cease to be afraid. We start to see that we are more powerful than we realize. And that's really the gift. And we really are excited for the journey. So let us know what you think. We'd love to hear your comments.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out.
And those of you who are going to be with us this whole weekend for our workshop, we can't wait. You guys are going to really love it. It's going to be, oh my God, it's going to be so awesome. So we're so excited for that. And we will see you next week for another episode, probably on Saturday this time, because we don't have a schedule, but we are going to bring some great topics to you about empowerment and living your purpose.
That's right.
So take care, everyone.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.